Hey guys, Sean here. Now, a lot of us has been hearing of the term becoming your own central bank, and it's really confusing if you're new to precious metals or you've been storing your money in a deposit account all your life. And I really want this to be a guide on how to take back control of your finances, and I really mean personal sovereignty over your money because at the end of the day, no one will care about your money except yourself. And if you look carefully, the rest of the world is actively trying to manage it for you or take bits and pieces of it under your nose. Right now, a lot of disturbing things are happening in our economy, and everyone is feeling it. I really don't need to point out the obvious, such as sky high inflation or the stock market starting to crater. It's really a war on your wealth, and we need to trace it back to the world's most irresponsible central bank. And I'm talking about the Federal Reserve. And it's really bizarre to me seeing the current administration trying to deflect blame and point fingers at everything from Putin to the Fed instead of taking responsibility to solve it. They've been saying inflation is transitory since 2021, and only just recently did they admit defeat with Janet Yellen acting so surprised, right? Oh, inflation is so high, I didn't know. And this is why, at the end of the day, we can only rely on ourselves to protect our own money. The cavalry isn't coming to save us. And this is where I want to start. At the beginning of how money is created through central banks, because if you don't have private wealth at the end of the day, you're opening yourself to getting screwed multiple ways that will just make your head spin. I recently made a video about central bank digital currencies or CBDCs, and that is what the future of money is going to look like. We can't escape it, there's no point trying to run from it. The digital dollar is going to happen. But the real problem here is with CBDCs isn't just the loss of privacy of your money, which I actually argue is the lesser of our worries because honestly, every electronic transaction today can be traced if Big Daddy government wants to. Now, the big problem here is suddenly one day you might wake up to negative interest rates. Yes, it could happen. It's one way to force people or influencers to spend our money instead of doing the responsible thing and save. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to be able to say when I spend my dollars and when I don't. And that is why you need to have some cash outside the financial system. Step one, have some cold hard cash that you can spend because it's not just about the digital dollar that's coming. Your money today isn't really 100% safe in the commercial banks as well. Now, I'm talking about these banks that have the ability to take your money and bail themselves out if some big catastrophic event happens. We call this a bail-in, which is drastically different than a bailout where governments just step in, print a whole bunch of money, and give it to the banks to save them. Now, many people probably understand that the banks doesn't have 100% of your deposits on hand. They only keep anywhere from 5 to 10% and loan out the rest. And that simply means if everyone comes demanding for their cash, they come knocking for their money, the bank will just likely collapse. So always remember that your money deposit is considered a liability to the bank. They consider it a burden where they have to pay out interest on it while protecting it at the same time. And we have seen this in the past where banks in Cyprus were failing in 2013. They effectively took a portion of their depositors' money for themselves. So if you had more than 100,000 euros, around half of the excess savings would have been taken away in exchange for shares in the bank. Now let's talk about Lebanon, right? Because in 2019, the same thing happened to the bank there as well. Banks suddenly were closed for 2 weeks and depositors were locked out of their accounts, and to this day, people are still fighting for their life savings. Now there was an incident where a business owner had his accounts worth $20 million suddenly closed and he was issued a check for 1/5 of the face value. Can you imagine that? Suddenly $16 million just evaporated into thin air. How are you going to pay your employees or keep your business running? Now, many of us are from different walks of life. Some maybe just have a few $1,000s, while I'm sure many viewers here are millionaires. But it's still going to hurt badly if your money is taken away. Proof your cash is suddenly gone. And this is the big issue that many of us don't really understand, that the money we have in the bank is not really ours. Yes, there are government measures such as the FDIC, which will tax money up to $250,000, but that will take time for the money to be distributed back. Maybe it'll take a day, maybe a week, or even a month. Who really knows when there's chaos on the streets? And in the meantime, do you still have money, cold hard cash on hand to spend for your food and gas, the basic necessities of life? Because I can tell you, if a bank run does happen, you better get yourself in the front of the line and pull your money out, because it's really a first come first serve basis, right? If a bank only has a portion of the reserves and if a bail-in happens, The depositors at the back of the line could get squat. And I don't want that to happen to you. Things are really getting dicey in the economy today because as we move closer towards a recession, it's anyone's guess how truly solvent each bank is, or how much exposure to toxic assets they have and how leveraged their books are. Because even if on the personal banking side everything's fine and dandy, they might have a zombified trading book in the commercial or investment banking division. So you really need to check the banking laws in your country and how much money is truly secure, and don't go above that limit. In America, it's around $250,000, as I said. In Singapore, it's around 75 grand per bank. So you really need to take the initiative and spread your risk, your cash across multiple institutions, right? And I really don't care what private banking perks you get for having millions of dollars in a single account. Can you really afford to see your capital get taken away? So it's really something to consider. That is why we need to be our own central bank. What a central bank does is to hold wealth directly within reach so a country can use it whenever they need to. And you need to do the same with your money. And I'm talking about holding cash as well as generous amounts of gold and silver, right? Every central bank with a brain cell today, except for Canada, keeps lots of gold within their vaults because it is truly a store of value, right? It has been time tested for thousands of years to hold value, and the same ounce of gold 100 years back can buy the same amount of stuff today. Now, we all know that inflation is eating away at our purchasing power, and it's definitely more than 8% or even 10%. Food and gas prices seem to be rising at least every quarter, and that is why just holding cash isn't enough. Now, if you look carefully, the money supply has effectively tripled since 2008 from 7 trillion to almost over 21 trillion. And it's not going to stop, guys. In the long run, they will start the printing presses once again. They will start to flush the economy with cash. And hard assets is the key. Cash is not sufficient. And that's why I'm very big on gold and silver. And right now, we are coming to the point where it really doesn't matter which you choose. Gold or silver, both of them just works fine when it comes to preserving value. Now, I personally prefer gold, smaller premiums, look more beautiful, and central banks exclusively stockpile it, and it stores a lot of value in such a small weight. For example, this 1 ounce bar over here, has a value of around $1,800 and only weighs 31 grams, and that's very astounding considering the same weight of silver over here contains only around $22 to $23. Around 80 times more value is held in gold. But we are fast reaching a point in time that gotta buy what you can afford, but also stockpile wealth outside of the financial system. And the thing is, paper money can get printed from nothing, and that's why we are seeing the inflation problems we have today. It's nothing too complex. It's central banks globally, especially the Fed, they're furiously printing money, and it's just a race down to the bottom. And that's why we are seeing gold prices just skyrocket across almost every currency, from the Japanese yen to the euro. And the reason why gold still isn't at the all-time highs to the dollar yet is because the world still needs dollars. They still trust the dollar. But that too is coming to an end, right? Not tomorrow, but eventually it will. And that's why it's essential to just have some gold and silver on hand. And many people might get turned off when they realize that, yeah, I gotta pay a physical premium on my precious metals, right? I gotta pay 5%, 10%. And I want you to view it this way. The premium you pay, maybe it's 5% for gold or 20% for silver. It's a fee you are paying to remove counterparty risk from your wealth. And that doesn't just mean that you can hold it and it's physically with you, but you're also removing risk from the crazy modern monetary theory policies we are facing today. Now, the idea that the Fed can print limitless amounts of money to get out of trouble without affecting the common man, because inflation is already soaring and it could get worse. And if you're new to precious metals, I really encourage you to view my old gold and silver videos because you'll quickly learn a lot and you'll definitely become an expert at it. It's nothing complex, just put aside some money every month and slowly stack it high and become your own central bank. Because I can virtually guarantee that if a currency crisis happens, the premiums we are paying today will be a joke. Premiums can suddenly double or triple if there's a bank collapse or hyperinflation hits, really triggering a wave of people into precious metals. And the best time to buy gold and silver is before you need it. Right now, a lot of us don't really understand the magnitude of what's to come. A big liquidity crisis is going to hit us, and how the economy's resilience is really going to be tested. Now, over the past few years, the Fed has printed up trillions of dollars since 2020, and this has all got us hooked on easy and cheap money. Now, I'm seeing a lot of people take out ridiculous mortgages, car loans have just gone through the roof, and financial firms are leveraged all the way up to the gills. Now, we are seeing big financial institutions just speculating on housing and buying up single family homes. People are competing tooth and nail for housing, and the crisis and the rents are really surging up to crisis levels. They're going up by double digits year after year. Now, just imagine once the Fed starts quantitative tightening and raising rates for real, once they decide to pull away $95 billion a month worth of bonds and MPS, what will happen, right? Companies will find it harder to borrow, mortgage rates will rise, and this might be the first domino of a financial implosion. And it's really simple to understand. Now the cost of money is becoming more expensive, companies can't grow, their profits are down, and people are going to lose their jobs. Just follow the chain of events. I believe the hardest institutions that are going to be hit the worst are the banks. Technically, if rates go up, banks should profit from the interest rates difference, right? Now, for example, if banks just pay you 1% interest and the Fed funds rate suddenly goes from 2 to 3%, suddenly they can make money on your deposit and it just doubles because they can just hit out, they can buy bonds and get a higher risk-free profit. But that is contingent that we don't slip into a recession, because if we do, then money will leave institutions to pay for food and fuel. Less people will also want to borrow money to buy a new car or house, and the bank is suddenly caught. And God knows how much loans or lines of credits all these big banks have given out, like the recent Bill Huang Archegos scandal. And that's the case of a big hedge fund that gambled with money from the banks and imploded when their bets went south. Now, this incident alone caused Credit Suisse Bank to lose around $4.7 billion, and their share price started to plunge to hell. Now, just imagine the smartest people on the block, highly educated bankers themselves, couldn't see this coming. So even if you think a certain bank is solid, you really don't know what mess is hidden behind in their books, and they won't tell you, right? If there's a ticking time bomb on their books, who in the world want to tell you, right? And let's speculate if a recession comes. Let's say a recession is here and things get from bad to worse, and we see small businesses and even corporations start collapsing. Now, this will have a cascading effect throughout the whole economy, and considering how fragile society truly is today, I won't be surprised if a bank run really happens like it did in 2008 during the housing crisis. And it doesn't even have to involve long lines of angry people with their pitchforks and tiki torches demanding for their cash back. Everything's electronic today, and we can have a silent bank run or panic where everyone just digitally transfers their money out to other banks to spread out the risk, as I said earlier on, or to buy up assets like real estate or precious metals, right? And during this period, if you aren't the first one out there, there are so many frightening possibilities that could arise, such as a withdrawal limits or a bail-in that could be triggered suddenly, and you don't want to be on the receiving end of such an event. And I really want us to take a moment to address those of us who have lots of assets tied up in the stock market. I love buying and accumulating stocks. I average in every month. I'm not a gold and silver nut. I'm not hiding under my doomsday bunkers with tons of gold piled up to the ceiling, right? But I'm not delusional to think that I have access to these paper assets or my stock market equities 24/7. Now, there have been many times in history where the stock market halted trading. Now, one was after the 9/11 attacks. Markets were closed for around a week, and in 2015, markets were suddenly down thanks to an internal glitch, right? There was an internal technical issue. So as long as your money is within the financial system, you don't really have sovereignty over it. And as someone who's in the markets, I'm fully aware of the risk, and I accept it because I'm already prepared with my physical gold and silver if a black swan event hits and we lose control over the system. And we really don't know what will happen. Maybe it's some incompetent engineer who screws up the system, or maybe it's a rogue nation launching a cybersecurity attack. And that's why, even when it comes to gold and silver, we need to go for the physical metal first before we consider buying up shares in gold and silver ETFs. Now, I understand the convenience, I have lots of it myself, but if you get locked out of the system, you could really see the price of gold just rocket north. but your precious metal positions are on the stock market and you just can't access it, right? And this is one real risk that many investors, even precious metals investors themselves, don't understand. So we just need to look back, I think in February or March this year, take the nickel short squeeze. Back then, you know that the metal is in high demand for making EV batteries for this new green energy revolution. And just suddenly, overnight or over a few days, there was a short squeeze thanks to supply shortages that just sent prices flying up around 250% out of nowhere, right? And can you guess what happened? The LME suddenly halted nickel trading for an entire week. And if you were long nickel, if you are betting on the price of nickel to go up and wanted to cash out for a profit, you suddenly couldn't, right? And when trading resumed, the prices just crashed down to earth. Now, if you held physical nickel for some reason, you have it in your warehouse, you could get rid of it during this freeze and sell it off in the open market and get cash for it and profit. And that is the true purpose of gold and silver, physical gold and silver, because you really want to be able to use it when the time comes, not see a paper price shoot to the moon while you're left high and dry. But what about Bitcoin? Does it qualify to be part of your own central bank? Well, I need to give a nuanced answer here because it really depends, and there are also so many what ifs. Firstly, Bitcoin depends on the internet to operate, and I'm going to assume we are still plugged in online and nothing happens to the World Wide Web. So let's just assume nothing gets taken down, or else there won't be a conversation here. Sure, Bitcoin can be considered a volatile asset at best, and it's true that you can transfer money out of the country and store it in an independent system that no one else can access. As long as your wallet address and private keys are secret, no one can steal your digital wealth. But the big problem is once we enter as hits the fan scenario, especially once the digital dollar is out, will governments still tolerate a competing cryptocurrency that is evading taxes during transactions? And the issue with crypto is that there are so many points of failure that are outside of the technology that no one else can control. Now, the technology itself is flawless, don't get me wrong. The decentralized network and the ledger is beautiful. But all it takes is for the government to prevent exchanges themselves from swapping dollars for Bitcoin and Bitcoin for dollars or maybe CBDCs. And in this era of the digital dollar, this can be accomplished much easily with just a line of code into the system. And this is a clear and present danger with cryptos that can never truly be solved. You need the government to be on board with the technology, and who knows how they will react when economic conditions deteriorate. Right? So if you see value in cryptos, I won't demonize it, but you need to be aware of the hidden dangers present instead of just focusing on its price going to the moon. Things are getting more and more chaotic, and I think we really cannot act like this won't happen to us. Things are really escalating as we see food shortages spreading across the world and different countries all trying to protect themselves first, then to help each other out. I think globalization is truly starting to break down, and we really need to get some private wealth in our hands, something that we can immediately use if tomorrow the entire financial system collapses or grinds to a halt. And that's why it's all about getting some cash out of the banks and within reach. And it doesn't have to be a lot, guys. I personally gun for around 6 to 12 months of expenses, and the rest of my physical wealth is in gold and silver. Mainly gold, but that's just me. Silver also does a fine job if you're on a budget. So right now we are seeing a lot of boundaries being crossed in Canada recently, freezing the truckers' bank's account, and even in China, local rural banks have frozen their depositors' money. Now that's crazy, guys. The situation is insane. Over $1.5 billion from a million customers were frozen that the bank used high interest rates to lure all these depositors in. And right now, the depositors are worried that the banks themselves didn't keep proper records and they can't get covered by the deposit insurance scheme, which is basically the Chinese equivalent of FDIC in America. So we shouldn't take things for granted. And if you're watching this and everything seems sunshine and rainbows for you, things are fine and dandy, really count your blessings and understand that you still have some time. So really think through your finances and see if you're prepared if S hits the fan or if you're leaving yourself too exposed. Because there are a series of events that are flying under the radar which most people just aren't seeing yet. So if you're watching this, you probably know that things are getting from bad to worse, and I really think that a recession is on the horizon if we aren't already in one. So don't take my word for it. do your own research on this. Just search around and learn from other experts, people talking about gold, silver, and being self-sufficient. Because the last thing you want to be is to be unprepared when the hammer falls. So I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this monologue, and it's rather long, I know, because I really wanted this message to be as comprehensive as possible. So let me know what you think in the comments below. God bless you. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for more videos as we navigate through this economic insanity together. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.